There's a darkness that lives inside every man, a shadow that whispers in the silence, that lurks behind the eyes when no one is watching. For most men, that darkness is unbearable. Some run from it, spending their lives chasing distractions to avoid facing the void within. Others bury it under layers of fake smiles, shallow ambitions, and desperate attempts to be accepted by the crowd. But then, there exists a rare kind of man, the one who doesn't run, doesn't hide, and doesn't pretend. He chooses to confront that darkness head-on. He doesn't fear it, because he knows fear only gives it power. Instead, he studies it, breaks it down, and understands it piece by piece until it becomes part of his strength. He turns that darkness into discipline, into clarity, into an unshakable weapon that shields him from the chaos of the world. This man is the Sigma male, the lone wolf who walks apart from the herd. He is not driven by hatred for the world, nor by a blind rejection of society. Instead, he understands the silent truth, that forcing himself into a world built on conformity and weakness would only cage his potential and blunt his power. His solitude is not a curse but a choice, a calculated withdrawal from the noise so he can master himself in ways others never will. And today, we're diving deep into the shadowed corridors of the Sigma male's mind. Not the glorified internet caricature, but the raw, unfiltered psychology of the man who has detached from society, learned to see without being seen, and mastered the art of weaponizing silence, cold logic, and ironclad emotional control. This isn't about image. It's about survival, dominance, and what truly happens when a man stops needing the world, and instead learns to make the world bend to him. 1. The isolation mindset. For most people, isolation feels like a prison, a punishment, a reminder of how fragile they are without the validation of others. But for the Sigma male, isolation is not a weakness, it's a weapon. He doesn't retreat from the world because he is broken or incapable of handling it. He retreats because he understands how corrosive it is, the fake smiles, the shallow conversations, the constant noise of meaningless distractions, and the hollow performances that society calls normal life. All of it eats away at his clarity. So, he withdraws, not in defeat, but in defiance. He retreats into silence, into the vast, unshakable stillness of solitude. And while the average man crumbles without external validation, the Sigma male thrives in this emptiness. But here's the paradox, that emptiness isn't really empty. It is alive. It is the forge in which he reshapes himself. Inside isolation, the Sigma male deconstructs his own identity. He strips away illusions, dismantles the false layers that society has forced upon him, and burns away the fragile ego that others cling to for survival. This is not comfortable. It is brutal. It requires him to face the raw, unfiltered truth about who he is, the strengths, the flaws, the darkness, and the untapped potential buried beneath it all. Most men avoid this process because it terrifies them. The Sigma walks straight into it. This solitary crucible becomes his training ground. Here, he sharpens his mind like a blade, rebuilding his inner world into something indestructible. His mental armor isn't built from applause or recognition, it is built from endurance, self-mastery, and discipline that no one else can see. He doesn't need eyes on him to grow stronger. In fact, he becomes his most dangerous, his most powerful, when no one is watching. Isolation, to the Sigma male, is not the absence of connection. It is the presence of ultimate control, control over his time, his thoughts, his energy, and ultimately his destiny. Where others feel small in solitude, the Sigma expands. Where others fear silence, the Sigma finds answers. And while the world is busy burning themselves out in crowds, the Sigma is quietly reforging himself into a man no one will recognize when he finally decides to step back into the light. 2. Emotional detachment, the weapon of clarity. Most men are prisoners of their emotions. Insult them, and they explode. Manipulate their feelings, and they fold. Tempt them, and they chase blindly without thinking of the cost. The average man reacts. His behavior is dictated by impulses he doesn't fully understand, leaving him predictable, easy to control, and ultimately weak. But the Sigma male is built differently. He does not react. He responds. And there's a profound difference. A reaction is instinctive, raw emotion taking the wheel. A response is calculated, sharpened by reason, stripped of unnecessary impulse. This ability to separate the storm of emotions from the clarity of thought is what makes the Sigma male untouchable in a world driven by chaos. Emotional detachment is his weapon. To outsiders, it may look like coldness, like he doesn't care. But detachment doesn't mean absence of feeling, it means mastery of feeling. The Sigma male feels everything, the weight of betrayal, the pull of desire, the sting of disrespect, the rush of passion. But he refuses to let these emotions dictate his choices. Instead, he filters them, studies them, and uses them as data points, fuel for clarity rather than blind reactions. In a society where manipulation is everywhere, from the media that sells you fear, to the relationships that sell you dependency, the Sigma male survives by remaining emotionally sovereign. He refuses to hand over the keys to his mind. And that's what terrifies people. You cannot bait him, guilt him, or trap him in the webs that ensnare ordinary men. This detachment makes him unpredictable. While others argue, fight, or cling desperately, the Sigma can walk away from anything, a relationship, a friendship, a job, or even an entire life, without hesitation. Not because he feels nothing, but because he refuses to be enslaved by those feelings. His silence cuts deeper than words, his exit hits harder than confrontation. And that unpredictability gives him an advantage that few ever see coming. The truth is, emotional detachment isn't a weakness. It's freedom. It is the ability to face life's storms with a calm mind, a steady hand, and an unshakable sense of control. While the world is busy drowning in their own emotional chaos, the Sigma male walks calmly through the fire, untouched, unbothered, and always in control. 3. Observation over reaction. Most people are addicted to noise. They talk endlessly, not to share wisdom, but to be seen, to be heard, to fill the silence they fear. In their rush to speak, they reveal too much, their insecurities, their weaknesses, their hidden agendas. But the Sigma male does the opposite. He doesn't compete for attention with words, he studies the room in silence. While others chase the spotlight, the Sigma positions himself in the shadows, quietly collecting data. He listens, not just to words, but to everything in between. He notices the subtle changes in tone, the hesitation before a lie, the forced laugh that hides insecurity. He reads micro-expressions, those fleeting facial cues that most people miss but that reveal the truth no one dares to say out loud. Where the average man gets lost in conversation, the Sigma sees the patterns beneath it. This is his true power, not in dominating the room with force, but in reading it with precision. He doesn't need to bark orders, flex muscles, or demand respect. By the time others realize what's happening, he already knows who's honest, who's weak, who's dangerous, and who's irrelevant. To him, people are open books disguised as mysteries, and he knows how to read every page. And here's where his advantage becomes almost unsettling. When you can see how people think, when you can anticipate their moves before they make them, you don't need to force power. You predict it. You control outcomes without lifting a finger. The Sigma male doesn't have to win battles in the open. He wins them silently, by knowing the enemy better than the enemy knows himself. That silence? It's not passive. It's a weapon. It makes people uncomfortable because silence strips away the masks they wear. In silence, liars stumble, pretenders sweat, and manipulators reveal their desperation. Words can be faked, but silence exposes truth faster than any confrontation ever could. And the Sigma male knows this, which is why he uses silence like a scalpel, cutting through illusions until only reality remains. While the world scrambles to be seen and heard, the Sigma male proves his strength by being unseen and unheard, until the moment comes when his knowledge, his foresight, and his silence shift the entire game in his favor. 4. Controlled darkness. Every man carries a shadow, a hidden reservoir of rage, aggression, and raw power that waits beneath the surface. For most men, that darkness is either suppressed until it explodes, or it controls them like a puppet master. They lash out, lose control, and let anger dictate their choices, leaving behind regret and weakness. But the Sigma male is different. He does not run from his shadow. He does not deny it. He does not let it consume him. Instead, he studies it, understands it, and forges it into a weapon of precision. This is the difference between chaos and mastery. The Sigma knows that true strength doesn't come from pretending anger doesn't exist. It comes from facing it head-on and bending it to his will. His darkness is not wild, reckless energy, it's trained. It's disciplined. It's locked in a cage, waiting for the exact moment it's needed. And when that moment comes, he unleashes it not in rage, but in focus. That's why Sigma males appear calm in situations that would shatter others. While everyone else panics, breaks down, or loses their grip, the Sigma channels his inner shadow into razor-sharp clarity. In chaos, he finds order. In conflict, he finds strategy. In pain, he finds fuel. His ability to stand unshaken when everything is collapsing isn't apathy, it's mastery over the most primal forces of his own nature. This controlled darkness is what makes the Sigma unpredictable, even dangerous. People mistake his calm demeanor for weakness, never realizing that beneath it lies a storm held in check by discipline. He can endure insults without reacting, manipulation without bending, and betrayal without breaking, because his shadow has been trained to serve him, not control him. But when pushed too far, when someone crosses the invisible line, that darkness sharpens into something terrifying. Not an uncontrolled outburst, but a cold, focused response that dismantles the threat piece by piece. It's not about showing the world how strong he is, it's about knowing he has the strength, the discipline, and the restraint to keep it hidden until it matters most. 5. The psychology of non-attachment. The average man spends his entire life chasing approval, chasing validation, chasing a sense of belonging that always seems just out of reach. He ties his worth to what others think of him, to the outcomes he cannot control, to the fragile identity society has handed him. And because of this, he is trapped. His emotions rise and fall with the opinions of others, his confidence crumbles when ignored, and his entire sense of self becomes a leash that anyone can pull. The Sigma male rejects this prison. His mind is built on the principle of non-attachment, a psychology that frees him from the chains of expectation. He does not cling to people, to material possessions, to outcomes, or even to the idea of who he is supposed to be. To the Sigma, identity is fluid, outcomes are irrelevant, and people are temporary. He lives with the understanding that nothing is permanent, and therefore nothing can control him. This is his freedom. When you stop attaching your happiness to outcomes, you stop living in fear of loss. When you stop chasing validation, you become immune to rejection. And when you no longer seek approval, you gain the most dangerous power a man can have, independence. The Sigma knows that if he expects nothing from anyone, no one can ever hold power over him. And yet, this detachment does something paradoxical. The very things most men chase begin to flow naturally toward him. When he refuses to seek attention, people can't help but notice him. When he doesn't cling to relationships, others cling to him. When he lets go of the need to impress, his authenticity becomes magnetic. The Sigma male embodies the paradox of power. The less he tries, the more powerful he becomes. But make no mistake, this isn't laziness or apathy. It's discipline. Non-attachment doesn't mean the Sigma feels nothing, it means he refuses to let those feelings enslave him. He can love deeply, but he does not need love to define him. He can win battles, but victory does not become his identity. He can lose everything, and yet remain unbroken, because his worth was never tied to things that can be taken away. This psychology of non-attachment is what makes the Sigma untouchable. While others spend their lives chasing shadows, he remains still, grounded, sovereign, and unmovable. He doesn't chase the world, and yet the world bends quietly toward him. The Sigma male's greatest power is not that he has a shadow, but that he has mastered it. Where others are enslaved by their anger, he has transformed his into clarity. Where others lose control, he tightens his grip. And that is why the Sigma can smile when others break, because his calm is not emptiness, but the presence of absolute control over the darkest parts of himself. 6. The manipulator's mirror. Here's a truth most people don't want to admit: the Sigma male has the potential to be one of the most dangerous manipulators alive. Not because he schemes to harm, not because he seeks power for the sake of control, but because he understands human nature with a depth that others can't even begin to grasp. Most men are blind to the psychological games that rule their lives. They fall for flattery, they crumble under pressure, they are led by fear, desire, and insecurity. But to the Sigma, these things are obvious. He reads them instantly, almost effortlessly. He sees people's hidden fears as clearly as their words. He spots the insecurities they try to mask with bravado, the desperate need for approval hidden in a smile, the unspoken hunger for validation that drives their every move. To him, human beings are transparent, their motives written on their faces, their weaknesses revealed in their patterns. And this is what makes him dangerous. He doesn't need to shout, threaten, or play childish power games. He knows what buttons to press, what words to say, or when silence will say more than anything else. If he wanted to manipulate, he could. If he wanted to dominate, he wouldn't need force, just subtle nudges, small shifts, and well-placed truths that unravel people from the inside out. His awareness alone gives him the potential to control entire rooms without anyone realizing what's happening. But here's where the paradox comes in: the real power of the Sigma male isn't in using this knowledge to control others. It's in using it to control himself. He understands the psychology of manipulation so deeply that he becomes immune to it. Where others are trapped by fear, he recognizes the tactic and disarms it. Where others are blinded by desire, he sees through the illusion. Where others are guilted into compliance, he shrugs off the weight without hesitation. This is the mirror effect. He reflects manipulation back to the manipulator. The lies, the tricks, the games that usually control people fail when aimed at him, and often expose the manipulator for what they are. He doesn't need to confront them with anger, his immunity alone destroys their power. Because how do you control a man who sees through every move you make? How do you trap a man who has already studied the cage before you built it? The truth is, the Sigma male's mastery of psychology is less about dominating others and more about defending his own sovereignty. He doesn't want to control the world. He wants to remain untouched by it. And that's what makes him terrifying to manipulators. They realize too late that every trick they know, he has already dismantled in his mind. To the outside world, this looks like unshakable calm. But beneath that calm lies the truth. The Sigma male has already mapped out the battlefield of human emotion, and because of that, he cannot be moved. Final words, the power in darkness. The dark psychology of the Sigma male isn't about manipulation, control, or blind dominance. It is something far more profound, integration. Most men are taught to treat their emotions as enemies. Society tells them to suppress their anger until it erupts in destruction, or to drown in it until they become slaves to impulse. They are told to numb their pain, to hide their fear, to silence their loneliness with noise and distraction. But the Sigma chooses a third path. He doesn't run from his emotions, and he doesn't let them consume him. He studies them. He dissects them. He turns them into fuel. Fear, to him, is not a weakness but a lesson. He studies fear until it no longer paralyzes him, until it transforms into courage, the kind of courage that can walk into the unknown without hesitation. Loneliness, which most men dread, becomes his sanctuary. He studies it until it sharpens into clarity, teaching him who he truly is without the noise of the crowd. And pain, the great destroyer of weaker men, he bends into purpose, allowing every scar to carve discipline into his character. What destroys others, refines him. What weakens the many, strengthens the few. This is the essence of the Sigma, transformation through awareness. His greatest weapon is not his silence, his detachment, or his refusal to conform. It is his self-awareness, the ability to see himself without illusion, to face his own shadow without flinching, and to use that knowledge as both shield and sword. He knows the cost of power, solitude, misunderstanding, the burden of carrying truths that others cannot bear. And still, he chooses it. Because in a world addicted to validation, in a society where men are controlled by the opinions of strangers, the Sigma understands the ultimate law: the man who masters his mind, masters everything. And here's where it turns personal. If you've ever found yourself alone, quiet, misunderstood, wondering why you don't fit, why you can't just play along with the scripts everyone else seems so comfortable following, don't run from that feeling. Don't bury it, and don't mistake it for weakness. That silence pressing in around you may not be emptiness at all. It may be the very beginning of your awakening. The start of your own dark psychology, your first step into the forge where you will burn away the illusions and rise stronger, clearer, untouchable. The Sigma male's path isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming who you truly are when the noise is stripped away. That's where the power lies. Not in escaping the darkness, but in walking through it, and learning to make it yours.